Welcome to this new episode of Note Nerds. So, we are the computerized educators, and today we have a great topic. We are going to be talking about the awesome drawing tools of CreativeStudio. Without those, we wouldn't be able to do half the things we love to do, especially if you're into digitizing your own designs. So let's get started. We'll start with Tucker today.
How did I know you were going to pick me first? The one that's my favorite, and I think that I use first when I open up Creative Studio is Draw Boundary. Now that might be an unconventional drawing tool, but it still is a drawing tool, right? And I use Draw Boundary, of course, in the way that you think you would, using your machine head to click around areas to place blocks. But I like to use Draw Boundary, especially when I'm digitizing patterns. I need that original boundary or that perfect square to design my pattern in. I actually just had a quilt come through the door where I had an unusual shape where I was trying to fit a pattern into, and I couldn't find any patterns that were that shape. So I used my machine head and drew that boundary around the shape, and I gave myself like a center registration mark with that boundary
Smart.
and digitized my pattern around that. And I think something cool with Creative Studio is you really can't have a favorite drawing function. You sort of need all of them to be your favorite, right? So I would definitely say Draw Boundary is my first go-to. And then, of course, some of the other functions we're going to talk about a little later.
All right. Kat, how about you?
So today I'm going to go with draw pattern. Another maybe unconventional one, right? But what I love about that is you can take any point-to-point pattern, use it, and create something entirely new. And if you snap it to the grid, because I was playing this morning, if you snap it to the grid, not only are they like Angela's laughing, not only are they like the same exact size, but I took a triangle this morning, snapped it to the grid this way, and then went back that way, and then rubber stamped it and made like a little edge to edge. So I don't know. It was really fun. I love playing with patterns and making new patterns out of existing ones. So.
Well, and I agree with you, Kat, with draw pattern being really cool because you can so efficiently place a sequence of patterns, and fill a large area.
Yeah.
And, that's to me is one of the most efficient ways to place patterns. And like you said, they connect and you can snap them. So that is one of my favorites also.
Especially when your quilt isn't perfect, right?
Yes.
I had a Lone Star last week and she wanted traditional continuous curve. And the draw pattern made it so those curves were perfect and they hit that point every time.
Yeah, you bring up a good point because when we play in SAM, yeah, it looks all perfect. But with draw patterns, because we click on the intersections precisely, it modifies it to those uneven piece blocks. So you're right. What about you, Doc? What's your favorite?
I like them all, but I love draw freehand. And I think what I use it a lot for is if there's a motif in a pattern, like on a quilt in a print or maybe even in the piecing, I can trace it with draw freehand and then turn it into a boundary and then trace it with an easier drawing tool like draw arc or draw line and then repeat it over and over. I had a lady who had a fox. It was this little fox motif and her son was in love with the fox and the nursery was in the fox and he had all the toys of the fox and I couldn't find a fox pattern. And so I just traced it right from the print with draw freehand and then was able to digitize it like in 20 minutes. Like it wasn't some major project. And you would have thought I gave her the moon. She was just really pleased with that. And I do that a lot. It's, every swirl is a little different. And so if you can do the swirl that's in the print, that's really cool. Every feather, every flower is a little different. So if you want the exact one, especially for ghosting and stuff like that, you can get it with draw freehand. The trick with draw freehand is to go very, very slow. And I sometimes will make sure my laser light is perfect and then go really slow with my head. And that works out pretty good. So
Okay, so I
Well,
think you answered my question, but you're starting with draw freehand just because it's faster.
yeah, yeah. Because the quilt's on the frame already. I'm not that
Yeah.
organized to have it all prepped in SAM beforehand. Often, especially if it's an edge-to-edge project, I start thinking about it as I'm loading it. So it's loaded. I'll grab my head, I can trace a motif and then plug it into an existing edge-to-edge, and off we go.
I
So
like
that,
the idea of tracing it directly from the fabric. I've never thought of that.
yeah, it's
That's pretty
fun.
cool.
And I do it if, if I am organized on a custom project or something, I can do it in SAM, and then you can trace
Right.
from a picture. I have an artist who I quote for, and she signs everything, and she wants the signature. It's not the same signature every time. And
Oh,
so she wants me to digitize it as she has signed it. And so that's an easy way to do it. And I can do that in SAM for my picture, and that works out
that's
even
cool.
easier.
I started using draw freehand because I didn't have confidence. There, we're supposed to have confidence, you guys. Don't listen to me. But because I didn't have confidence in my hand guided skills at the beginning.
Mhm.
So I found I could move the machine head in freehand, and I could just go. And then if there was any bit of it that I didn't like, that's when I would modify it. So that's
Yeah.
where my love of draw freehand started. So yeah, just as
Smart.
a little learning, just a little safety net. I need that safety net. I know
Yeah.
you're all shocked, but
No, I never would have thought to use that to like practice.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
yeah.
It gets the image from the quilts to the screen in a
Yeah.
pretty efficient way. So then you can trace it or play with it or whatever.
Clean it up. Yeah.
well,
Cool.
and I think the most important point you made, Doc, was that you have to go really slow. Because when I first tried freehand, I thought, what the heck? What?
Yeah.
Because, I didn't, because when you write or draw, you go at your whatever speed.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it looked horrible. I said to myself, I'll never use that again. But then from when we had to use it in our Quilting with Confidence um, class, I realized the slow is better. And, using it the way you described it for tracing fabric is really or elements on the fabric is really a great way to use that.
I'll add to Ava here that I also find it more successful if you're frustrated with it. Try it with your machine head than with the mouse or anything like that. Actually do it with a machine head because
Mhm.
tends to be a little bit easier.
I've never done it with a machine head, and now I'm gonna go over there. Like as soon as we're done, that's what I'm gonna go do. Like, what can I trace?
I want to see pictures.
Oh, I'll send pictures.
Yeah.
I started it with a simple little curl. It was like something I probably could have done
Sure.
freehand. But I really was struggling to find a motif for this custom quilt. And so I thought, well, what motifs are already in the fabric? And the fabric was pretty boring, but it had these tiny little curls in it. And so I traced one with freehand and then blew it up and connected them and played with it. And it was much more efficient than doing it freehand. I could do it a lot faster, fill different areas. And my customer thought it was, genius, when really I was just stealing the motif that was already there.
But correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm sure I am. When you trace stock with your machine head and then you digitize it, that is all pink notes, correct?
Yes.
Draw freehand. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why you've
So,
got to
and
go
for
slow.
that reason, I would think that it's important to know, depending on what it is, and you may want to make minor adjustments, that you probably want to retrace it with, any other of the drawing tools,
Yeah.
so you get the blue notes accessible as well, right?
Yes, ma'am. I've never done it where I've traced it with freehand and then just used it. I've always had to trace it. And then I usually turn it into a boundary because then it doesn't move on me. And then I trace it with either draw arc or draw curve.
Okay.
Because then I get my blue nodes and
Yep.
I'm just more confident with those drawing tools.
Yeah, ditto.
All right, Angela, you're up next.
What you got, girl?
Well, I guess I'm gonna go conventional.
Okay.
And I'm gonna talk super boring, draw a line. So, and it's because I use it all the time. I use it to stitch in the ditch. I use it, I am a quilt border turner. I like to turn my quilts, and so that draw line comes in really handy because it can be used with my other favorite one, apply pattern. And we'll talk about that one another day, I'm sure. But yeah, draw a line, it's just what I use most often, I guess I would have to say. That and draw arc for the same reason. Just it gets around ditches and appliques and all that stuff. So
You know what I
Yeah.
love draw a line for is that you only need 2 clicks. So
yeah,
sometimes you just need a teeny tiny little boundary, and a boundary needs 3 clicks. So instead, I'll just use draw a line and then convert it to a boundary. I do
that
that
is
a lot, especially
a,
the quilt I'm working on right now.
yeah. Or like when Tucker talked about the boundary
Yeah,
and
with the
then
X in the
wanted
middle.
the X in the middle.
Yep, 2
Yeah, I'm
clicks.
usually doing a combination of the two, and I'll draw the boundary for the square, and then I'll use draw a line to go from corner to corner for exactly that reason, Cat. So it doesn't like overdo the third line and when it's trying to close it, and just convert them to boundaries. So
Yep.
To add to what Angela said, one of my favorite things to use draw line for is we talked about draw patterns. And depending on where the starts and stops of those patterns are, in order to stitch out everything, and do the ditch work at the same time, I will add draw line in between the patterns, try to figure out how to make it work so everything stitches out completely in one swoop.
yeah,
Because I
So
don't want
like,
to have to
you
go
mean like
back.
connecting the ends
yeah,
from here to here to this
Exactly.
row?
They're
Yeah.
yeah,
connectors.
I
Yep.
was going to say that's how I use it the most is if
Yep.
I connect my edge to edge, the end of an edge to edge, if I can get 2 rows and then connect the ends
Yeah.
before I fill, then it'll connect them and run that line right down the boundary, right? Which I do just outside my quilt. So it's perfect.
Yep. Well,
And
I
another
guess.
great thing with draw line. Oh, sorry, Ava.
No,
Another
you
great
go
thing
ahead,
with
Tucker. Sorry.
another, another great thing with draw line is that it's really easy to do some piano keys,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
right? In combination with the grid, you just bam, 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 and you have piano keys. You set that grid to whatever you want that to stitch out at, and in a hot second, you have a whole row of piano keys to stitch out in a border. It's really, really great.
I
Ava,
saw
you
a
know,
lady
I'm
once
sorry.
on YouTube when I first started. She was using one of those stamped whole cloth patterns.
Mhm.
And she was, instead of using draw arc, she was clicking it out with draw line, all of those tiny little points.
Yeah,
And I just wanted to like yell through the computer, no, use the right drawing tool.
yeah.
That would take
You're,
forever and there's
you're
no
making
glue or
so much
no.
extra work for yourself.
Oh, I feel for
Um,
that lady.
I
That's
know.
where you say, bless your heart.
Yeah. I think sometimes we get I do get stuck in what I know, right? And
Yep.
so it's a good to know them all because I think all of us sort of talked about using a combination of them to make them
Mhm.
really efficient.
Ava, what's your favorite?
My favorite is draw arc. Well, as somebody else said, they all are useful, but I get quite a few applique quilts. And so I will then use draw arc to click around the applique. If I choose to do the ditch work around that with the Statler, for
Yeah.
as an example. Um,
It's okay to do things hand guided too.
Yes.
but no,
We all
that's
love
what
to do
I,
hand guided, but yes.
but that's a great way to use draw arc,
Yeah.
and that again, I tell students that draw arc, if they want to use that to ditch around the applique to just import an image with an applique and just practice, because draw arc takes a minute to get the rhythm, for them to understand that the third click, it's also the first click, and most importantly, to listen to those specific sounds
Mhm.
and to have your starts and stops on so you can see where the third click was of that, arc. But I also like it a lot to draw patterns with draw arc and then, distort, you know, and add points to a circle, then use circular ray, to turn it into something fun. So draw arc in comparison to draw curve, for instance, um, I guess it's like you said, whatever we're used to, but to me, I prefer draw arc over draw curve,
Hmm.
whereas others, their go-to is draw curve for the
Interesting,
same
because
purpose.
I really and truly thought you were a draw curve girl. Huh.
No,
No, me either, Ava. I'm with you, Ava.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
100%
love
draw
draw
arc.
arc as well.
I
But
think it's the predictability of it. It's easier
Yeah.
to
yes,
predict than the draw curve.
yes.
Like when you first start using draw curve, you'll notice it doesn't put that line there, so you don't see where that curve's actually going to form until
it
you click the next
hesitates.
one.
It
It
seems
does.
like it hesitates, and then I don't get instant results.
Yeah.
So,
It's because it uses the point prior. So like when you're clicking here, the next curve can't get drawn yet because it's using this
Exactly.
point. Anyway,
To
but
create the curve.
when you're clicking around your applique, did you use your trapunto foot so you could get closer?
for the clicking out, no. Mm-mm.
Angela did
I,
it last week. She was telling me about it, and I thought that was pretty smart.
I
Yeah,
use the trapunto foot to go around wool applique when I stitch it, to
Mhm.
get in between those layers. Because the ones I do, which are the Suspoigo ones, they have 2 and 3 layers plus
Mhm.
stitching on top. Well, I
Oh,
want to go in the center, and that's best done with the trapunto foot.
oh, I never thought of that. That's
You
cool.
have to start from the center out, because if you use your regular hopping foot or the open toe or whatever foot, if you start from the outside in, you push that wool, that thickness to the center,
Oh,
and you can no longer get in there.
you got
I
a
use it
nice
a lot to stitch around beads and like
ooh.
buttons,
Yep.
and I've got a couple ladies who like to do a lot of embellishment, and I've tried to get them to embellish after, but
That's not gonna happen.
sometimes that doesn't happen.
No. So
And
for
the
that, the
trapunto foot's great.
trapunto foot works
Yeah.
great.
yeah. It was cool. It was a quilt. It was all doilies that she'd collected and didn't know what to do with. And so
Hmm.
all the doilies were in the center, and some of them were quite high. They were almost crocheted
Hmm.
doilies. So I found the trapunto foot got nice and close, and I could use draw arc, Eva, to echo around really nice and close. So
Yeah.
that's what I use that for.
I sometimes take the foot right off when I'm tracing, so I
Mhm.
just have the needle,
Oh,
and I drop the needle if I drop the needle not so it's touching the fabric, but so it's
Yeah,
pretty close. And you've got to remember not to snag stuff, right?
yeah.
But I can get it if I'm after precision, then and I might not have my laser light perfectly dialed in. That's a quick way to get some fast precision. Now, if I'm going to do a whole bunch of it, then I'll take the time to calibrate my laser light. But
Hmm.
I think that sometimes taking the foot off and just having that needle right where I want it gives you that little bit extra precision, and it's easy to with the approach system to take the foot on and off. So
So I
well,
do
you
that too,
probably
but
shouldn't.
sorry, Ava.
Sorry.
I've never tried to do it with the foot off.
yeah,
That's interesting. But I do that too.
just
I
for the
just
tracing,
manually
not
lower
the
it.
tracing.
Just for the draw function you're
That's
using.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Just to bring
yeah,
it back.
yeah.
Sorry, Ava.
We should probably mention that, we talked about it a little bit about making sure your laser light is set up correctly. And you can simply do that by putting a piece of painter's tape, and pierce it with your needle and then make sure that the laser light hits that. And you can also adjust the beam of your laser light on top of your machine head. It's a black knob that you can turn in either direction to adjust the beam of the laser light, because the drawing tools, if you're actually working on the quilt, are only as precise as you are with that laser light, right?
Actually, yeah, Ava, you bring up an excellent point because there's another way that I use draw line, and it has to do with the laser light. So, I do a tiny little, like when I'm trying to line up my laser light, I put my painter's tape on the thing, and then I'll draw like a tiny little line from A to B, just off to the side. Because then if I say start quilting, it'll go, and it first thing it does is it takes that stitch, so it pierces my tape, and then it locks up, and that's the only way you can lock it up vertically and horizontally so it doesn't move while I'm adjusting my laser light.
Mm.
And then once that's done, I just say cancel because I don't want to stitch it, and then I'm good to go. But don't forget to delete that line because you don't want to stitch it after. It's a stitchable pattern. Ask me how I know. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's another quick way to just lock it up so it's nice and stable so you can get your laser right on that dot.
That is genius.
Wow, all good tips, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
That's why I love draw line. No, I'm just kidding.
Did anybody else want to add anything? No,
I think we covered it.
we offered a lot of different things. So you out there, play with your drawing tools, because yeah, they're a lot of fun. So I guess we'll see you next time on the next episode of Note Nerds. Bye.
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 Bye.